Why is a random guy with a little whiteboard explaining you how to communicate? Well, I was able to get interviews at PwC and American Express mainly because my communication was really well. I had no prior experience whatsoever in any job previously, and I was able to get interviews at such companies mainly because of this. So in this video, I'm going to teach you exactly what communication is, but I'm going to make that abstract topic as simple as possible so that you can understand and implement it right away. The first thing I want you to understand about communication is that communication is very often two components. Firstly, there's verbal communication, and secondly, there's non-verbal communication. But for this video, we're going to specifically talk about verbal communication. When it comes to communication, the most important thing that you have to first of all get cleared is to understand your audience. You need to, quite frankly, understand who you are speaking to. You have to understand the field you're in. You need to understand that you are, in the environment that's suitable. You need to talk about pain points that are related to them, and you are going on a journey. Now let me explain the going on a journey part. Because if you are communicating with somebody, you have to understand that this person that you're talking to always wants to go from one place, from point A to point B. Always. Every single time, the conversation needs to have a destination. So I want you to bear in mind that when you read the audience, you have to understand the journey of where the audience is trying to go. And from there, you will develop the communication skills. Now, point number 2. Be structured. As crazy as it seems, I made the mistake many years ago that when I would like to communicate and articulate myself, I literally had no structure. It was free form. I just had whatever thoughts and words came into my mind, I would just let it out. And so that was the issue. And the reason why I had no structure was because I had no strategy, and I had no strategy because I had no plan. And the reason I had no plan was because I didn't think before I spoke. Right? So let's talk about what it actually means to be structured. Now, the 3 points. You need to be clear. Your conversation has to be linear. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And you need to be precise. Now, clear and precise is quite frankly the same thing, right? But clear talks more about the tonality, talking in a, loud voice. Make sure you're not mumbling, make sure you're not stuttering, make sure that your conversation and words land, and so that your specific perhaps pronunciation and tonality is correct. Now, if you're learning a second and third language, obviously there's you have a few difficulties regarding that. But for example, me as a native German, I need to make sure that my German is as clear as possible with the words so that the people actually understand it. Let's talk about linear, right? I want you to understand that the issue is that when you think about thoughts, when you think about something that you want to talk about, your brain works in such a way that it thinks like a web. Imagine like a structured constellation of patterns. You just have scattered thoughts everywhere, and basically what your brain does, your brain seeks out the patterns, puts that train of thoughts into words, and so when you conversate, when you talk, every type of word follows a linear sequence, right? Basically in a logical order, right? And so every single word goes word by word, right? We do not say a lot of random words at one point. We say things word by word, and not only does the words logically follow the specific sequence, but you need to make sure that contextually speaking that it makes sense with the logical flow. Like you start with one topic and then your flow is quite on track and you keep talking about the same topic continuously. Next, avoid these things, these mistakes that I've done very often before and I still do to this day. But here are some very basic things that you should avoid, and it happens more than you think. Number 1, empty phrases, open-ended. Now, a lot of people, when they conversate, they would basically end their sentence or conversation with something open. Now, let me give you an example. So somebody asked me, yeah, so what did you do today, Julian? And I'd be like, okay, today I went to the park and then I saw a dog and the person gave me like 3, 4 treats. And that's all. They just leave it open ended. There's no conclusion to your story. You have to make sure that when you conversate, your story, your context of the story needs to conclude in some way of matter. Either you finish the story, or you conclude in such a way, like, when you watch a movie scene, like there's always some part that just ends the scene. For example, you say, okay, I gave the dogs a few treats, full stop. And you're like, okay, like that's the end of the story, right? The second thing is what I do very often mistakenly is overload, right? My issue is when I have a lot of thoughts, like in a single moment, like right now, like I get very excited and then I would just overload the conversation. And the problem is when you overload the conversation, the person from the receiving end listening might be just, overwhelmed with the type of information and knowledge. Like, yes, you are excited and you want to share a lot of stuff, but you have to understand from the receiving end, their brain needs to like digest and process the things that you're telling. If you're talking about in one conversation about 5 different types of topics, then obviously like they need to process each topic one by one, and the time for them to process the conversation will already like make them lose themselves in the moment, and they can't basically listen to anything you say after, right? The third one is on logical complication, right? And that comes back to the idea with linear earlier. Now, I did this when I was in secondary school very often, was when I start talking about something, at one point I just get so carried away of the conversation that I completely forgot where I started with, right? For example, I would talk about a specific topic like, okay, what type of sports did you do today? And I'll start talking about, like going to the gym, and eventually I'll talk about taking a protein, and I'll talk about like nutrition, and I'll talk about like, I don't know, sweets. And then so like I started the conversation with like somebody asking me like what type of sport you did, and I finished the conversation with, or I had a smoothie shake. Like even though it's kind of related to the same domain, like the receiving end of the communication, right? He's just thinking like this person's just going too off topic, and that's something you want to avoid as well. Now that you understand this, how do you practice communication? There are 4 specific ways which I like to do. Number 1 is teaching. Not only do you improve communication by teaching, but you actually learn better, and there's really science behind that. And so if you are trying to communicate about a specific topic that you don't know, say that you have a presentation about IT and cybersecurity, right? And let's say like you have no experience whatsoever, or you don't know much about the topic of cybersecurity and IT. And so what you do is, before you start having the type of communication / interaction, you teach it. Essentially, you take the topic, you dismantle it into, conceptual abstracts, and then you explain it as if you are teaching it to someone. Because that way, your brain will logically mimic the way you are teaching it, and finding a way to turn, the strain of thoughts into a conversation or narrative. And so teaching is one. Number 2, writing. Now, this is something that I would do in German, right, to obviously polish my specific language. If there's a specific word I'm not really good at pronouncing, I would write it down. Because when I write it down, I will basically read the word letter by letter. And so not only will that improve my pronunciation, but it also help me, create a much smoother flow of how to actually say the word and contextually follow it word by word. Number 3, peer review. Now, this is something that perhaps you're not very comfortable doing, and to be honest, me neither. But you just basically go to a friend or close family and say, hey, listen, like in terms of my communication, like, could you just rate it and just see like which areas I should improve? Like, how is my flow? And I understand like why that could be uncomfortable, but very often peer review is a very good technique to actually figure out what you're doing wrong from a third person perspective. Because even though, we communicate and convey our messages, very often we don't see like things that people see from third perspective, right? Sometimes, like, because you're thinking at the moment, you have filler words, you go like or like you say things that really doesn't make sense, but at the moment you don't realize. And so very often, like, a person from a third perspective will pick it up. And so if you would ask that person, okay, like what went wrong in the moment, then perhaps it will explain it to you. The last but not least, and this is something I do every time before interviews or presentations, I'll just look in the mirror and have a conversation with myself. And yes, I know it sounds like very weird and strange and off-putting, but this is such a powerful technique, and this is thought so many times, especially before presentations and public speaking. But if you just mirror your conversations, if you literally talk to yourself like in the mirror and just pretend as if it's somebody else, and then you kind of go through with your brain about what you're going to talk about, then you are essentially practicing the language itself, the communication, and also you are practicing the specific topic that you are going to talk about. So I hope you understand that these are some of the essentials of communication. I hope that you're able to at least understand from a first principle perspective on how it works. And hopefully by this end of the video, if you do like it, please subscribe and like. If not, I'll see you in the next video. But most importantly, I hope you're able to improve your communication. See you guys soon. You know what I realized? I didn't put